Let me ask you about some of the things you see in this country from your perspective of everywhere you've been in the world. What do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement here in America that does struggle with the role of skin color today and throughout the history of this country, and maybe even throughout the history of the world?
Well, Black Lives Matter has been a very hard one for me because do Black Lives Matter, those three words together in that order, what they mean? They mean everything because Black lives do matter, as any other lives do matter. But I know in this case why they say Black Lives Matter because some of the context we have had. Now, while I agree with the principles that Black Lives Matter, I have a big problem with the organization and what it stands for. When I have an organization that pretends to want to stand for Black lives to matter, yet you are self proclaimed Marxist socialist, I pause. Why? I pause and then I'm like, have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing? And the reason why I say that, Lex, is because 60 some years ago, it started before even 60 some years ago, Black people, in this case, I'm talking about the African people, I'm talking about the Black Africans who would go on to really cement this concept of African emancipation and African liberation. And here I'm taking us back to 1945. They had four of them before that, but in 1945, in Manchester, UK, happened something that would become major for Africa and its future, especially Sub-Saharan Africa. In Manchester, UK, people like Blaise Diagne of my country, Nyerere, Tanzania, Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana, and others from different parts of the continent got together with Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois. And I say Du Bois because that's how we say it in French. He has a French name, French sounding name at least. And Americans would say, so for Americans listening, I know you say Du Bois,
Oh
but it's
boy.
Du Bois. No, because just in case they're like, who is she talking about? That's who I'm talking about. Um, so all of those people got together in the UK
Yes.
and with W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, big top African American intellectuals of their times. W.B. Du Bois had so many things happen to him, starting from the North, being more or less a liberal type guy, came to the South just to see at this time, Black people being lynched and some of their body parts being shown in store windows. I mean, just for a second, we put ourselves in his shoes. I put myself in his shoes. And that's when he started to become radicalized, right? Because at first it was like, oh, reforms, this and that. And now it's like, God darn it. And I mean, these people, we don't talk to them. We force. And eventually, little by little, things going through. Yeah, you have these people, they're very much on the Marxist socialist train.
So do you think the sort of it's the political movements that are just using?
Yeah, because what happened back in those days, it is true that to their credit, communist socialists were fighting for equal rights. They were fighting for the rights of Black people to have equal rights. So, of course, I could see why one could say, especially in those times, you're being lynched, bodies burnt, body parts showcased at window stores. Meanwhile, in Africa, under colonization, in your own country, in your own land, and you have this group that's saying, your fight is part of what we fight. Of course, you're going to say I side with you, especially if this is all happening at a time where, so 1945, these guys who would be the liberators of various African nations, they're meeting with Garvey, with W.E.B. Du Bois. And that's where this meeting is very important. It's the 5th Pan-African Congress meeting. It's very important. It's going to be their last one, but it's the most important one because that's when they formed their plans and really rallied around this concept of African emancipation, and African liberation. We're going to liberate our countries. Then later, so that's how all of these movements started to happen. And from there, Gandhi was already making some progress with India, getting them out of British rule and all of that. So all of this was happening, and really, like, this whole thing was bubbling, like there's like a new force going on. And then we arrive in the late 50s, and, Nkrumah with them with the British as well, they might manage to become their colonization is over. They're the first one to go in, 57. Then from there, it's what we call the independences. That's when most sub-Saharan African nations are getting their independences. Different dates. Mine, April 4th, 1960. So all over. So this is happening. And now think about it. You're talking 57. You're talking 60. We're like at this time now with the middle of a Cold War. See, because we have to put things in context if we want to understand what's going on. Because people today ask me, why do you think, because even now when they understand, oh, you're right, it makes sense. If you have no economic freedom, you're going to be poor. But why? Why did they go for this? Why did they go for this? And then they don't understand. So that's what happened. So beginning of times, pre-colonial Africans were free marketeers, free enterprise. It's pretty well recorded by someone like George Aite. That's where I got the cheetah thing from, and Ghanaian economist. And then slavery happened, colonialism happened, and then the independences, late 50s, early 60s for most sub-Saharan African countries. So there, what you have is, but then what happened there? So I told you in 45, 5th Pan-African Congress in the UK with the liberators of Africa, under the leadership, because he was the wise, eldest man. Du Bois he was in his 70s back in the day. So he's older than them, and he's coming with all of his ideas and everything. So they're like, ooh. So there they are. Now we're in the late 50s, early 60s. We're starting to make progress with the independences. India has gone there before. So all of that is starting to happen. And at that time, remember, they already were being introduced to the concept of socialism, Marxism, all of that way before by some of these Black African-American intellectuals of their time who were very socialist Marxist by that time. So now they're becoming independent, because I do independent like this because I reckon that there's still neocolonialism going on. Mm-hmm. So now this is happening, they're becoming free. But then you look around, what do you see? That now most of these liberators of their nations become the president of their nations. But remember what I told you? Most of them have drunken the socialist, Marxist socialism Kool-Aid. So as these African nations become independent, with their first independent governments and presidents, most of them are socialist, various forms of statist type of government. And this is because at that point we had made a fatal mistake of saying we are Marxist socialist because you guys fight for equal rights. So in this case, there should be no colonialism or anything like that. So not only you have that going on, and the people, so right now you had this battle of ideology going on, because on one end represented by freedom and the economic, the economic system they were using is capitalism. And these are represented by the Western nations facing off with Eastern Bloc, practicing various forms of statism, socialism, communism, various forms of statism. And these two are fighting for influence. So, and we're also it's also not, so two things there. One is we're at a time where, remember, the free market concept was almost dead. Almost dead. So almost every intellectual at that time was social Marxist. Or Marxist socialist, I put the name. That's what you were. So you're in a world where it was the normal thing. It was just mainstream acceptance. So not only you have that force, but at the same time, if these two forces are fighting one another, it turns out that the one representing capitalism and freedom, well, sorry, but isn't it you who enslaved us and colonized us? And you're fighting with the people who represent, supposedly people who are saying that who had been fighting for equal rights for us with us for the longest time. These are our friends. And that's when we made a fatal mistake. Because while, yes, there were maybe good things to agree on with Marxist socialists of the times, especially, equal rights for all people and all of that, that's the only thing we should have, among the only things we should have agreed upon. Their violent revolution tendencies, no way. When it comes to the economic nonsense, no way. We should not have thrown the baby out with the bathwater, but that's what we did. And that's when we made a fatal mistake. So then we became free, all of these nations, and most of them started with socialist or communist leaders. My country, socialist. Leopold Sédar Senghor, he was a socialist. And they stayed in power for 40 years. The first 40 years of our freedom years. And all over the continent, more or less, that's what you had. And on top of that, something else that the French don't know, the people don't know, is France, with its colonies, said you cannot not do. You have to keep the French civil law. So we're talking about the Napoleonic civil code. Are you kidding me? So that's what happened. So the reason why I go back to BLM is while I have all the respect in the world and all the compassion in the world for people like Nkrumah, for people like Nyerere, for people, all of those people of those times, the liberators of Africa, while I have so much love, compassion for them, I am also able to say, because I got the benefit of 60 some years time and, where you get to do a debrief and see what worked, what didn't work, what happened. We have had those 60 years to look back and to reflect. So yes, I can understand why they did what they did. I can understand why they sided with these people who on the surface, or at least some part of a fight, was the same fight as them when it came to equal rights. I can excuse them, but I will not excuse the BLM founders, because that mistake was tolerable 60 some years ago. Today, no. The blacks of today cannot be serious about Black Lives Mattering and saying in the same sentence, and we're going to be socialist, Marxist socialist. It just doesn't work.
So the BLM movement is too deeply integrated with ideas
those
of
ideologies.
Marxism.
Yeah. They're anti-free market, anti-capitalist, and we do know that you have to have the free markets in order to build prosperity. And prosperity means economic power. If you have economic power, no one messes with you. Or if they're going to do it, they're going to have to think twice. And when they do, they're going to have to pay consequences. So if you want for blacks to be respected anywhere in the world, you're going to have to be serious about black prosperity. En masse. Not just a few people, Oprah over here and somebody over there. No. We as a group have to be a critical mass of prosperity across the board. And because we're talking critical mass of prosperity across the board, it means black people everywhere in the world. But guess what? We in Africa happen to represent 90% of the representatives of the black race. So you cannot be serious about Black Lives Mattering without being serious for Africa, the 1 billion people in Africa that are black, and for them to have access to the free markets and yes, fossil fuels, so that they can rocket, up prosperity-wise.
And the resources of the young people, the young minds.
So that all of these young people, young minds can finally manifest their greatness that I know they have and that they're showing you us every day despite the obstacles. That's what we need. Senegal becomes rich. And Senegal can become and will be richer than France. The colonizer, Singapore did it, we can do it. Mali rich, Nigeria rich, functioning as well. Malawi rich, Tanzania rich, Uganda rich, Zimbabwe rich, Niger rich, everywhere rich, prosperous. As prosperous, if not more prosperous than Switzerland or Singapore or the US, I don't know, or the Liechtenstein or Luxembourg, places that have no, natural resources. We become rich, and you watch the world having a very different relationship with us. That's the only time we will command any type of respect. That's when people, even our common psyche will change, even about Black people. All of the stereotypes that they have of us is gonna melt away. And you may still not like us, but you will still respect us because we are a force to be dealt with. And only economic power does that. It would be nice, of course, for us to respect people because they're people. It would be nice, but let us not kid ourselves. This is Earth. And someone said, nice people will make it to heaven, but not to Harvard necessarily. It's true.
It's interesting that pity does not ever turn into respect. It would be nice if it did.
It would be nice, but it doesn't.
Prosperity is the
only thing. And the way we do that, there is no, just like all of us humans have to inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. That's a human way of breathing. Mm-hmm. You bring me but you want to be foolish and be like, oh, well, sorry, that's how white people breathe. So us Black people, we're going to have to do something different. Well, good luck with that. Right? Yeah. So this is here why I'm saying I have no patience for Black Lives Matter. They're making a mistake that was made 60-some plus years ago. Even more than that, maybe even 100 years, when we were siding with the Marxist socialists because they're the ones who've been fighting for equal rights.